Hello! Last week I made a video showing how to prep paper for marbling. This week I'll show how to make the bath. The bath is made from carrageenan, which is a kind of seaweed. It comes in a powder that can be added to water to thicken it to the right consistency to float the paints on the surface. I mix up 3 tablespoons per gallon of water. I always measure out all the carrageenan I'm going to need before I start, because I will lose track if I try to count as I go. The tap water where I am works just fine, but it might not everywhere. You can try using distilled water if your tap water doesn't work, or if you want to eliminate some variables that might be affecting your marbling. I use this regular kitchen blender. I put in about 1/3 of a gallon at a time, then about 1/2 tablespoon, blend for about 30 seconds, then put the rest of the tablespoon in and blend for another 30 seconds. If you have a more heavy-duty blender, you could probably mix up more of the carrageenan at a time. I like to do it in stages because my blender is kind of wimpy, and I don't want to burn it out by making the bath too thick right away. I continue doing this until I've mixed up all the bath I need. My tank holds 2.5 or 3 gallons, I think. I usually mix up 4 gallons if I'm going to be marbling for a few days. The bath will start to thicken as it evaporates and some of the paint sinks in. And a little bit of the bath comes off with each paper and when you clean the surface between papers. So having a little extra on hand to refresh it and make sure it stays deep enough for your combs is a good idea, especially if you're marbling over multiple days. Depending on what kind of marbling you're doing, you might want your bath thicker or thinner. The thinner it is, the more and the quicker the paint will move on the surface. I like this consistency because the paint spreads pretty quickly, but I still have enough control for patterns that I don't want a lot of movement in from the combs, like a narrow chevron pattern that would be messed up if the bath moves too much between the 2 comb poles. Because the bath will thicken up as you use it, I often do those sorts of patterns towards the end of a weekend of marbling, so the bath is a little slower. The bath will keep for a few days. I usually make up a batch Thursday evening to use Friday through Sunday. But it will go bad and start to smell if you keep it much longer than that. It is basically just seaweed water. I'm not measuring it super precisely as I go. I'm just trying to keep it more or less the same consistency as I blend it up. If I end up with a little bit too much carrageenan at the end, I just make the last bit a little thicker. It will all settle together overnight, so this isn't a big deal. As you can see, there are a lot of bubbles. I usually mix up my bath the day before I'm going to marble, so the bubbles have time to settle overnight. Once the bath is clear and free of bubbles, you're ready to start marbling. This tank is really well designed. I got it from coliphonbookarts.com. It has this little trough and draining hole, so you can prop up a board to pull the paper onto and rinse it off easily. It's also very convenient for emptying the bath out when you're finished marbling. You will also need strips of newsprint or old newspapers you've scavenged from church. I sadly do not have a board shear, but I make do cutting my newsprint by hand, several sheets at a time. These will be used to clean the surface of the bath between papers. This removes the leftover paint from the previous paper and keeps the surface clean. Even little specks of dust on the surface can leave blank spots on your paper, so it's important to keep it as clean as possible. These strips of paper are also used to pull the first layer of paint to the sides of the tank. If you don't do this, there will be little edges of empty bath at the sides of your tank, which your combs will pull into the middle of your pattern, distorting the design and leaving blank spaces on the finished paper. I hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions about something I didn't cover about the bath for marbling, let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.